Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's school committee meeting. Maddie O'Meara, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, we have a consent agenda, the minutes from May 24, 2018, and oath to bills and payroll. Actually, hold on a second. Erica, were you here at that meeting?
Yep.
Okay, good. I thought so. I just want to make sure. We only have 3 members tonight. We have 1 member, family obligations, 1 member who's under the weather, but we do have a quorum, so we can go ahead with the consent agenda. Need a motion to approve.
Okay.
I need a motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
Okay. I'm making a motion to approve the consent agenda as read. Second.
We got a second? All right. Is there any discussion on that? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay. We have 2 sections of the meeting for input from interested citizens, 1 now and 1 at the end of the meeting. Are there any interested citizens who would like to speak before the school committee? Seeing none? All right. Our student rep update. We have a 2-headed presenter. What do we have?
My name is Kriti Sharma,
And I'm Madeline O'Meara.
and we would like to thank you for having us today, and we hope we will fulfill Olivia's position.
All right, so the Shaker Lane had their art show last night, and Mrs. Kane would like to thank Mrs. Romano, Mrs. Taylor, and the students for all of their hard work in preparing for this successful evening. And she would also like to thank the parents, students, and community members for a great school year, and wish everyone a wonderful upcoming summer break.
Russell Street Field Days are taking place this week, and the Russell Street Band and Chorus Concert is performing tonight at this very moment.
At the Littleton Middle School, the 6th grade Country Expo took place this morning. The band and chorus concert and art show was this Tuesday, and the NGHS induction ceremony was Wednesday last night.
The Biology MCAS took place this week. Awards night is next Thursday evening for all underclassmen, and finals will take place in 2 weeks. So, yeah.
All right, great. Thank you. That was at least as good as Olivia would have done. Well, welcome and thank you. You guys know you can stay as long as you want and leave whenever you're ready, okay?
Thank you.
No apologies necessary. Lucky. All right, we're going right into presentations.
Our 2 principals aren't here yet. They're both at
Well, we're gonna do
school
the,
functions, and we can just go through part of the agenda.
Yeah, you want to do the field trip?
Let's do the field trip first.
Good evening. I'm Valerie Finnerty. I am the 8th grade science teacher at the middle school, and I also have been running the 8th grade Washington, D.C. trip for the last 4 years, so next year would be my 5th year. So I'm here to request approval for the 2019 8th grade trip to Washington. Next year's trip will take place from May 20th through the 23rd, the Monday through Thursday before Memorial Day weekend. We've been using those dates for the last couple years. During this trip, our 8th grade students go into the U.S. Capitol, the Library of Congress, and the National Archives. They visit the Vietnam, Korean, and World War II war memorials and the Lincoln, Jefferson, and Martin Luther King Jr. memorials. We visit Arlington National Cemetery and tour several Smithsonian museums, including the Holocaust Museum, the American History Museum, and the Air and Space Museum. Next year, we plan to add the African American History Museum and the National Zoo. Traveling in general helps students to understand that there are places, people, cultures, and history other than those with which they are familiar. Visiting Washington, D.C. makes the foundations of our government and the history of our country tangible. There are direct curriculum links with what students have learned in middle school and with what they will study in high school, including the foundations of government, the Holocaust, U.S. history, and various science concepts. Traveling without parents also is a maturing experience. Students gain self-confidence and a sense of self-reliance. Thank you. I do have a student with me. I'm supposed to have 2, but the other one went to the wrong place, so she might show up soon. So this is Estella Austin, and she's here to talk about her experience a couple weeks ago on the trip.
So in my family, we have this thing that we call good, better, best. We use it as a way to describe our day and tell everybody just in a short way what we did. I'm going to do the same thing, but with our DC trip. There's also another variation of it, which is called Good, Bad, Great. But the only real bad thing of this trip was the length of the bus ride, and there's not much that we can do to fix that. So the good part of this trip was the weather and all the places that we saw. We went to a bunch of memorials, like the Jefferson Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, the Martin Luther King Memorial, just to name a few. And all those, they were awesome places to visit. I have never been to Washington, D.C. before, and seeing those places in real life instead of pictures was just awesome, and I found it really fun and really cool. Better was all the museums and how we went to the Holocaust Museum and the Newseum, which is a new type of museum which is more about modern type history, where it has more news headlines and goes more in depth there. And we went to some of the Smithsonians, like the Air and Space Museum, the Natural History Museum, and the American History Museum. All these kind of tied together what we'd been learning in school and what we are going to learn as we go forth into our high school and college lives. And the best was the experiences that we had with our friends, the fact that we got to go on a trip without our parents, but still have some independence and be able to be in contact with them while experiencing all these amazing things in front of us and seeing them for ourselves, not on the internet, was really just an awesome experience. And the fact that we got to be there with our best friends and learn some new things about new people and new places was just really awesome. Thank you.
We should ask if there are any questions.
She summed it up perfectly.
I'm always real quick to run away from the microphone. Are there any questions for me? Our other presenter, Gianna Biagioni, went to the middle school because I think I didn't tell her where the school committee meeting was, so that was my fault.
I thought everybody knew where the school committee.
I did too.
It's a place to be.
I'm just curious if you're adding the African American Museum, how you think how it's all gonna fit in? Because
Well, we
that's a
took
lot.
out, we had been going to Gettysburg, so I took
Okay.
that out. So I sometimes shuffle things around, trying to make, kind of refresh it and also to streamline our trip home, trying to make it fit better. And the Smithsonian museums are free also, so I was also working to reduce the cost to keep the increase down.
How many days is the trip?
It's 4 days and 3 nights. And contrary to what Stella said, a lot of the kids cite the bus ride as part of their favorite. It is a long trip, but they just seem to love, maybe not the way back, but on the way there, it's just a big party with their friends.
She's right.
Any other questions? Yeah, we have an alumni here.
I actually only have a comment. I appreciate that you've done this for 5 years. It seems like it was just a year ago that Mark left and you took over. This is a significant commitment by you and the staff that goes down. And we appreciate the fact that you guys, sustain this year by year. Because we've had other students come in, and I've had students, live in my house that have gone through it, and it is probably the pinnacle of their experience. They do other great things, lots of other cool things beyond the classroom at the middle school, from 6th grade right to 8th grade, but this is kind of the piece de resistance, and you guys do a tremendous job with it. And the idea of, it is Washington, D.C., you're not going to get to see everything at once, but you're thinking about how can we maximize the impact for these guys so that they might want to go back on their own and see it again. You guys do a terrific job, and it's a big commitment. We really appreciate it. And in here, we see the cost, but we also see the fundraising that goes on, and the ethos is to get every kid that wants to go will go. There's no question about that. It's going to happen, and you guys make it happen year in and year out, so we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, but this is where we're going to approve it tonight?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
very
because
organized.
Yeah.
A whole year in advance. That's great.
Because this is an out-of-state trip, it does require school committee approval. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the DC trip for 2019. No, you
Oh, I have to make, okay, I make a motion to approve the Washington DC trip for May 2019. Second.
All right, motion and second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Great.
Thank you.
All right, another year. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right, we want to go over the student fees.
Sure. The school committee had asked us to incorporate the presentation of fees at the end of each year, just so that they had a reminder of what we charge. And I'd like to start off by saying I don't believe we've had a fee increase, with the exception of the hockey surcharge, for over 12 years. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So we've done really well at holding the cost. We're actually reducing kindergarten fees. We're on a 5-year reduction plan, so that the intent is that there would be no fees at the end of the 5-year implementation. So if you look at the first column there, or line, 2018 kindergarten for full day was $3,300, and for next year it's $2,500, which is another substantial decrease. The other fees are self-explanatory. I think it's a great idea to have these in front of you once a year, so that you know the fees that we're charging. And if you look at inflation over the past 12 years, that would be at least double-digit percentage
Not zero.
increases. Yeah, we've been
That's
doing
not
zero. Any questions?
Eric, any thoughts or comments?
I'm just curious, do we know how they compare to towns around us?
We did do a study a number of years ago, and we were actually fairly low. I mean, there are districts, a few out there, that have been fortunate enough to not charge anything, but they're pretty hard to find. So we've been I feel very competitive, because we haven't increased them for 12 years. So I think we're doing well. And we're very, very cautious. Every time we have a discussion during budget, it doesn't take us long to come to the conclusion that we really want to keep our fees as is, if we can. And we've been successful for many, many years.
No.
Yeah, I have a couple things I want to say. Having fees is not ideal. And I think it was right after I first got elected that we put the bus fee in for the first time, which was 12 years ago. The nature of the fees that we charge are pretty common. I mean, almost every high school has athletic fees. The student activity fee is pretty common. That's a very low fee. The bus fees, the athletic fee, and the full-day kindergarten, which will be zeroed out eventually, are certainly substantial, and we shouldn't ignore the fact that they definitely have an impact. All of our fees are subject, students are eligible for a reduction in it if they're on free and reduced lunch. So that's something to keep in mind. And then when you talk about the budget, yes, we raised the issue during the budget process so that we never take for granted that these fees are in there, and they are legitimately subsidizing to a significant degree some of our operating costs. But the one thing that I always raise the point when we're talking about it in a budget context is it's not as simple as raising the fees and then you have more subsidizing going on with the fee structure and less on the appropriated budget, because if you raise them too high, you're going to see a decrease in participation, whether it's the bus fee, the athletic fee, or whatever it is. And that's something that we need to be cognizant of, because the idea is not to maximize the amount of money we're collecting at the expense of families being able to take advantage of the programs that we need to offer, whether they're athletics or transportation or anything else. So I think it's important that we always keep that in mind. It's obviously there was a big community request to support the reduction of full-day kindergarten to make it tuition-free, which we are striving to get towards, and I feel like we'll get there. That's our plan. The other fees, I think that it's unfortunate we have them, but the fact that we haven't raised them since we put them in there, I think is, we understand that it does have an impact, and we're trying to minimize that as much as possible. But in this day and age, with the level funding of the appropriation from the state, we're not going to be able to get rid of these fees. And the best we can do is hope that we can continue that commitment to not raising them. I agree, Kelly. I think we should make sure that we're looking at this year in and year out. And it might be good. I know you mentioned, Eric asked a question about it. It's a great question. Where are we in comparison? We think we're okay. And when last time we looked, we were. But I know it can be difficult sometimes because things are structured differently. Like, we have the family cap for athletic fees and bus fees. Some districts don't do the family cap, or they structure it a little bit differently. So it can be a little tricky to compare apples to apples, but I think it'd be worthwhile. So maybe every, third year, we can just reevaluate where you are and just see where the trends are going. I think that would be helpful too.
We can certainly do that next year.
All right, great, thank you.
I do have
Yep.
another question.
Yep.
I was just wondering if you or somebody could explain a little bit about the differences in the days of kindergarten. Like Tuesday afternoons were the same. I don't know. It seems like they aren't jumping down the same amount. So I'm just curious if there's.
That's because of the number of actual days in the school year.
Okay, that's what
They vary.
However many Tuesdays or
Right.
Thursdays. Okay, thank you.
All right, great. Thank you. All right, what do you want to go on to next?
Let's see. Oh, we might as well actually go right into school improvement plans. Dr. Harrington here, so Dr. Harrington is here, so
Yeah, I'm here.
go ahead.
I did talk to you, I did my way back from the lacrosse game, which we won today, 60
Great.
against Ashland High School. So we're moving on to the next round. I did bump into Mr. Bazidlo, and he is at the concert at the high school, so he'll be here shortly. So I think we'll bring up just the overview, Mr. Everhart.
Yeah.
We go back to the.
While we're searching for the overview, and thank you, Mr. Everhart, for pitching in for Steve Mark tonight. The SIPs are all aligned with our strategic plan and the 5 standards that we have. And beyond that, within the educator evaluation process, teachers have student goals and professional goals. And those goals are also aligned with our SIPs, school SIPs, and also with our strategic plan. So we have a complete alignment from our strategic plan right to what's happening in the classroom. That's a pertinent discussion that we've had many times. If you want to pursue the vision of a school district, you have to make sure that your roadmap is clearly understood and everybody is moving towards driving on that road, so to speak. And we've been very successful at moving our district and schools quite a ways in the past number of years, and as a result of that recognition, both state and national. And more importantly, we feel that our students are very well prepared when they leave our high school and continue their post-secondary endeavors. So I just wanted to mention that before we start tonight's presentation. At the end of the presentations, by statute, the high school SIP needs to be approved by the school committee, but with current practice for many, many years in this district, we've always taken a motion to approve all of the SIPs together. So we certainly will be continuing with that practice.
Okay,
Go
we'll
ahead,
jump.
Dr.
Yeah, happy to jump right into our first category or standard area that is aligned to the strategic plan, as the superintendent pointed out. I would build upon that just by adding that we're at a point of transition soon with the different grade levels. Shaker Lane moving on to some of the students from there, moving on to Russell Street, and Russell Street moving on to middle school, stepping up. Is that what they call it?
Yep.
And then before you know it, the 8th graders will soon be 9th graders. We just sent our graduating class off to, the workforce and to postgraduate, post-high school studies, or, on to post-secondary life. And so those transition points are really important too. So we try to have, when we look at our school improvement plans, we do talk as a combined admin council to look at how we align some of the things that are happening in the middle school and build upon that. And I'm sure at Russell Street they're doing the same thing with Shaker Lane. So there's this real pre-K to 12 vision that's enacted. And so I just wanted to add to that. With the curriculum area for the high school, we've talked about this at previous school committee meetings. A real focus for us is going to be the computer science curriculum to really develop a thoughtful program sequence. And then really think about what the courses would look like, and by looking at area high schools that have established programs, looking at what higher education is looking for, and looking for what the workplace is looking for in students who come out of high school. What should the skill sets be in that area? design the program and then staff accordingly is what we're looking to do in the next year. We've talked about the importance of staffing that position in the near future, and we look to do that, and you'll see a proposal from the high school to do just that after we have put together a program sequence that we'll present first to you, and then along with the budget proposal for a teacher. The next one I'd talk about is creating and implementing plans to address social emotional learning and responsible digital citizenship. I think social emotional learning has been talked about extensively throughout the year and previous years here at the school committee. It is a strategic plan priority, and it's embedded in all our school improvement plans at each school. And responsible digital citizenship is becoming more and more important to us. I know the middle school has a cyber safety presentation for parents. It's not just geared toward middle school parents, but high school parents are also, all district parents are encouraged to attend. It's with the Middlesex District Attorney's Office.
So the District Attorney Ryan will be at middle school.
We're already jumping on that goal.
Evening,
Yep, and that's something we've done in previous years. At the high school, had a joint 6 to 12. The venue has changed to the middle school, but in the past we've had it at the high school auditorium where we've had a 6 to 12 invitation, focused on digital citizenship or cyber safety specifically around the dangers that are out there, and alerting parents to making sure that they're checking on their children's devices and watching screen time, things like that. You'll continue to see that with a series of presentations at all levels throughout the year ahead, offerings for parents, but also offerings for the students too. Particularly in the fall, I think we're going to plan something for the high school, and I don't know if the middle school is playing the same. Is the middle school doing it in June or next fall? I think the fall. Okay. And then we're going to also this has been an area of focus at all. Certainly 6 to 12. I can comment on that. The development of executive skills in students at each grade level. Our new tutoring center has been instrumental at helping that. Helping students who maybe need a little extra intervention with the development of executive skills. And just as a refresher, in terms of identifying specific skills, we're talking about things like organization, planning, time management, sustaining attention, goal-directed persistence, task initiation, and they have a favorite term in education, metacognition, really thinking about our thinking, reflecting on how did that go, how can I do better next time, and learning from experiences. So executive skills have been, as I've said, an area of focus and will continue to be, and we'll be looking to see how we embed that at each grade level in specific courses. We'll be developing a program review. This has been some time coming at the high school. I know the science program at the middle school a few years ago went through an extensive program review, and this will involve really something that Dr. Jamie will also comment on in the fall, in regards to the development of a curriculum renewal cycle for the district, where we look at our unit plans, we look at our lesson plans, and all the courses in a specific department. But it has, because the high school is organized departmentally, it can be quite a comprehensive review. So it has to be scheduled out which department we're going to focus on each year, or maybe maybe 2 departments per year. Generally, it's done at 1 department a year because it's such an extensive undertaking. We'll also have area experts from other high schools come in and look at our program. Other teachers, other department chairs come in and comment on, to evaluate how we're doing and how we can improve. They might observe classes. They'll look at instructional strategies, our curriculum materials. This is something that's going to have to be planned. It's going to take a little while to really thoughtfully do this, and then the implementation will happen. What we're looking to do in the next year is plan it out. In terms of instruction, we're going to continue to support and document project-based learning activities in each department. We already see a lot of project-based learning in the high school, but we want to document how it's happening, because we think that's an area that we really want to emphasize in developing students' collaborative skills, their ability to communicate, to present, to delve deeply into a topic through research, and then be able to be somewhat of an expert. But maybe there'll be team presentations, not just individual presentations. I think our students who are here tonight could probably, if we won't put you on the spot at all, but I know that you've already experienced project-based learning in your classrooms. So we're also going to, as part of our professional development program, form a study group for instructional best practices as part of site-based PD, and then review and implement selected recommendations. We have a lot of expertise in our building. We don't have to bring necessarily someone else in. This will be a book study group as part of it, but it will also involve presentations at faculty meetings where our teachers will get up and present to each other about best practices and instructional strategies and invite other teachers into their classrooms. We do this, but we want to expand upon it. We're also going to revamp our student support team processes and document cleared and shared intervention strategies for students struggling with a host of issues, whether it be behavioral, academic, emotional concerns. This is already an existing team in each building in the district, but this is a team that we want to sort of refine our practices. There's always, I've said this, it's almost cliche to say, I guess, because every year I get up there and say that we have an ethic of continuous improvement in Littleton, and this is one way we're exemplifying this at the high school, is by looking at how can we do a better job with intervening with kids who are struggling in first quarter and not waiting to the middle of the year, or we don't want anyone finding out at the end of the year that a student fails a class, or that if there's a student who's not having a meaningful connection with a teacher and is sort of lost and lonely, or not. And that shouldn't happen in a small school, that's for sure. We should be noticing these things early on and talking about it and making sure we're putting in the proper interventions to help kids. Assessment. In that category, we're going to organize and lead a faculty study group about assessment and grading practices. This is sometimes called this is a very sensitive topic for some teachers, for sure, because we're going to be really looking individually as an administrative team, but also as a school leadership team made up of teachers. How do we grade? What do we have in common? What's our philosophy about grading practices? And are we using a variety of assessments, but not just one or two like colleges do? We want to make sure that we're using there's a fair amount of assessments, so students, if they have a setback and don't do well on a given assignment, have multiple opportunities throughout a term, throughout a year, to improve upon their performance. So this is something that we'll no doubt be coming to school committee to present on at some point. But first, we're going to delve internally very deeply into how we assess and how we grade as a faculty. This is a big undertaking. This is an ambitious school improvement plan. There's no question about it. And some of these goals, although they're laid out for 2 years, may need to extend beyond that. We recognize that. This is something we've been talking about for a few years, though. The next one, which is to create and coordinate and implement digital portfolios beginning with the class of 2022. And this is lined perfectly with the Chromebook initiative. Madeline and Preeti might be able to recall we talked about doing this with binders at one point, and then doing it with the class of 2021 with the Chromebooks. We've had a lot of false starts. It just has not launched. So we commit that we have to start again. And so what we're going to do is we've already formed our book study group with a book called, interestingly enough, Digital Portfolios. This has been it's written by an elementary school principal, believe it or not, who was very effective. He designed a very effective and implemented a very effective rollout of digital portfolios at his school. And we've studied that book, and we're going to follow a similar model. Our tech team is going to be instrumental, but our faculty will be rolling this out to all the students in the class of 2022, and when they come in the fall, they'll be hearing about that. And I have a lot to say tonight about preparing for MCAS 2.0, but that's certainly a goal for us as we look at the future computer-based testing in the different MCAS subject areas. In terms of professional development at the high school, this is something I think that is a goal that's shared across the buildings, providing PD opportunities, including cross-district related to technology integration and implementation of specific products, tools being used, as well as new initiatives. It's a little wordy. We probably have to improve our wording of the goal, but definitely providing professional development opportunities that involve other districts. We just saw the rollout of that this past year with Air Shirley and Harvard joining us for PD, and we'd like to host that at some point in Littleton. I think Air Shirley was the host of it last year. So we're going to see more of that coordination with other districts, but definitely a heavy focus on technology integration. This is an easy one for us in terms of, because we do it already in a lot of areas, but when we meet with teachers in the fall, we're going to link their educator evaluation goals to recertification and PD plans. This is more of an internal goal for us. It's probably not something that people would really be it's not that jazzy, but it's something that's meaningful to individual teachers in terms of recert and licensure in the future, to make sure that their goals are not just tied to school improvement things, but things that will help them get relicensed. We're going to continue to provide professional development for, there's a little typo there, but for social emotional learning, executive skills, instructional technology, and assessment. Those are areas of focus across the district, but certainly that are resounding at the high school. In terms of community and communication, we're going to advance our dual enrollment partnership. You've already had presentations on that, so I won't go into that in depth. Increasing internship opportunities for students in local area workplaces. Partnering, this is a new one for us, and we've already had a couple of discussions with the superintendent of Neshoba Tech and principal to partner with Neshoba Tech in some type of innovative way. We have a few things floating around, but stay tuned for updates. I have really nothing to debut tonight. We're also going to host health, career, college, and financial literacy fairs. Now, the college and career fair is established at the high school. We've done that, and we're very grateful for all the parent community support for those initiatives. The health fair and then financial literacy fair will be new events at the high school. We're going to continue our long-standing practice of having hopefully inspiring but special guest speakers about important contemporary topics. A number of those topics at a high school level will be related to substance use and misuse, and health-related wellness topics will also be a part of that. And we'll work with the wellness committee, that's the district committee, to coordinate some of our guest speakers. Climate and culture will adopt a course in the program of studies that directly focuses on developing global competence and understanding. Now, it's something we've been talking about. We really see that as a nice elective for our school. We're not sure exactly what it will look like, whether it be a non-Western literature-focused course in the humanities, or it will be a course that's called Global Studies in the Social Studies department. We're having discussions as a faculty about that and sorting it out, but you'll be hearing an update about that in next year's program of studies. Of course, as we talked about at a previous school committee meeting just recently, we talked about how important it is to review emergency protocols, and that is already well underway. But that's just an area of focus that never really goes away for us. But we're certainly going to initiate more drills next year. There'll be one in the fall, one in the spring, related to intruder protocols, and really a real focus on coordination with the LPD and the LFD. We're going to continue our fire drills. So you'll see more of that, more information about that in the future. Follow up and create an action plan based on our climate survey, youth risk behavior survey, and staff surveys. What we want to do as a faculty or a school leadership team is consolidate this information and roll out an action plan based on what we've learned. A lot of the topics that I've mentioned already will certainly be addressed: school safety, social emotional learning, executive skills as part of the response to those surveys. In terms of technology, the last category, we're going to revise and update our school technology plan. It was a plan that has sort of seen its life and needs a renewal. So we'll conclude that in a year by working with the tech department. And then we're going to continue to implement our one-to-one technology program with a phased-in approach with next year's 8th graders as they come up to the high school. There'll be, of course, abundant professional development because our model already provides for that, with focused instructional technology and support for Google Classroom and other parts of the Google Suite. I know I moved fast. I've tried, but I think there's a lot of things to go through, and I hope that is informative for you tonight. See, the high school is always buzzing with lots of initiatives, but hopefully not just for the sake of doing it. These are really thoughtful areas of focus for us in the next, I would say, not just the next year, but it will go into a third and potentially in some areas a fourth year.
Questions, comments, John?
No, as the questions came up, the next sentence was always the answer.
Oh.
That was great.
Well, I followed that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I know, I was like, I have.
Erica?
I have a couple questions, but it kind of relates to all the schools, so I don't know if you want me to wait until after
Why don't we wait?
Russell
Yeah,
Street
let's-
goes, and
there,
then
see if
we'll.
there's something else that
Okay.
comes up that adds to it, that's fine. Next, we'll give one thing.
Thank you.
At least for the moment.
Excuse me. Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to touch base as we write a new school improvement plan. The Russell Street School team has continue to work really hard, and we have lots of great things coming up in the next 3 years. If you've looked through the plan specifically, you'll see there's tons and tons of action items in the plan. As I think about the rest of this year and the next 2 years, I like to think of the things that are really big rocks for us that we want to really make sure we do and we do well. And this update for you is really easy to write. Those things for us in the next 3 years are going to continue to be writing. They're going to continue to be small group math instruction. We'll be bringing more math workshop model to both Russell Street and Schcmte Lane, and I'll talk specifically about that. And we're going to work really hard to take a look at our vertical alignment of not only programming but expectations of students and the rigor that's required in each grade to make sure that our students are successful moving forward. So I think Principal Kane and I will be spending some of our early release days with staff next year, allowing them to work in vertical teams to start to take a look at what we're doing now and where we can be moving as a district K-5. Every time I do third grade orientation, I always say I feel like we're one school in 2 buildings, and we want to continue that push in Littleton and make sure that we're tightly aligned and that we're sending students to the middle school that are prepared for the things that they'll face there. We're excited about Math Workshop. For people that aren't familiar, Math Workshop is much like Reader's Workshop, and it includes lots of small group instruction. Lots of teachers teach the main lesson 2 or 3 times to small groups while the other groups are going around doing other learning centers. So it may be a technological intervention like Dreambox. We spoke in this meeting previously that we've been lucky to add Dreambox to the tools that we have for all students, and that's a great adaptive mathematics program. And teachers use a variety of other types of centers, games, reviews, those types of things, often allowing students to work collaboratively, or in pairs to review work that they've done. And so we have lots of lots of teachers that are doing Math Workshop now, but we have full day professional development from a presenter coming in that Michelle has seen previously for our full day next year, and it will be a major push for us and ties in nicely to our Dreambox initiative as well. As we think about writing, we've talked previously that we continue to look at supplemental writing programs to supplement our Journeys program. That continues. We had recent professional development on extended writing tasks, which you may also think of like an open response, like a requirement for students to look at a piece of literature, multiple pieces of literature, or other sources, poems, those types of things, and do an extended writing response. We had some excellent professional development for all 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. Fifth grade teachers in this area recently, and it was really well received. So we have an upcoming meeting in the next couple weeks, right, to hear feedback on that extended writing task protocol. So I think we'll be seeing more implementation of that. It's designed grades 3 to 8, but we've already had some conversations with grade 2 about things they could be implementing to start to get students prepared for, again, the rigor that they face as they move through the grade levels. I added as the 4th one, mostly because I just wanted the opportunity to talk about it on TV and to share it with you. We're very excited at Russell Street School to be adding a kiln to our art program. And Mrs. Romano has been interested in a kiln for a long time. If she does any pottery at all, she needs to bring it to another school, and there's always the risk of damage and that type of thing. And so this is a pretty expensive project. You'd be surprised how much goes into it beyond a kiln as far as electricity and venting and the safety needs and all those types of things. But we have been fortunate to get funding from at the district level, the building level, and from our PTA to be able to pull this off. So by next fall, I expect our students at Russell Street School to have the opportunity to be doing more projects that require a kiln in the arts program. So that dedication to the fine arts, I think, is important. Sometimes we get lost in academic achievement, and there's lots of kids where the fine arts is where they really value their time in school. So we're really excited to have that added. The professional development aligns very tightly with our curriculum instruction and assessment goals. We will be using some of our time in vertical teams. We have that one-day math workshop program. We'll be continuing to use and send teachers and bring folks in to talk about writing and helping students be successful writers. And we continue, as we have in the past, to offer new instructional technology type PD so that we can stay on the cutting edge and make sure that we're using technology to enhance instruction for our students. When we get to our third goal, community communication, one of our things that we have started recently at Russell Street School is we do 1 or 2 parent forums each year. They've been called Empowering Families 101 up to this point. We just recently did one that was called Creating Excellent Readers and Outstanding Mathematicians. It's a session for parents to come to. where some of our staff spend time talking to them about how they can help their children be successful at home. We did one on social media and cell phones and those types of things. How can you help your kids be safe online? We did one on social emotional learning. Some of the things that we're seeing in school that students are facing, trying to partner with parents to provide any information that we can, or support any parents who need support, helping their children in those areas. So that's been really successful. That's been a goal that's been written by Russell Street School teachers, and there's a group of folks who have coordinated that, and we've had other guest teachers appearing at those sessions, and it's been really well received. So we do a survey after each one, and the parents that have come have really enjoyed it. We are, as a district, taking a look at our websites for ADA compliance, particularly folks who are visually impaired, and how is the school and district websites accessible, and so that'll continue in the coming year when it comes to communication as well. Excuse me. When we come to climate and culture, we continue to talk about social emotional learning. 5 years ago, Russell Street School became a responsive classroom school. All teachers were trained in a week-long workshop. We continue to find the need to offer even additional instruction to students around social emotional learning. So we have teachers who are building some homegrown lessons, but they're always craving more opportunities for the opportunity to assist students with social emotional learning. So some of the things we're looking at in the next couple of years include sort of a shared resource where teachers can, put lessons they've done with their students successfully to provide opportunities for other teachers to use them, and to take a look at some supplemental programming that teachers may find valuable for, lessons to really help students build in those areas. We talk about empathy and perspective taking and, risk taking. We watched a video on altruism the other day. Those types of things, the citizenship stuff that is so important for our students. We were very fortunate, this is just about a wrapped up project, but we were very fortunate to complete a project for an outdoor classroom space at Russell Street behind the school. That was two Russell Street teachers, Heather Love and Jessica Schofel, wrote an LEF grant to put in what at the time we thought would be sort of a bark mulch circle and some stumps to sit on so that teachers could go out there, and from additional support from PTA, again at the building level, again at the district level, and the donation of some labor and resources from some Littleton area businesses, it really is a beautiful space. It's a full circle of pavers. There's, someone that works in the tree business shaved stumps, and we're refinishing stumps, so they're real, stumps, and then they did some landscaping up in the back, and there's an outdoor chalkboard, and it's really a really nice space for students. It's interesting, it's probably definitely within earshot of 495 because it's behind Russell Street, but it's the most sort of rural spot we had. We didn't want to have it out in the playground where people are trying to do a lesson during someone else's recess. We wanted it to feel sort of like, in its spot, and it's amazing how quickly you stop hearing the traffic when you're in that area because it's such a vibrant space, and lots of kids have really been enjoying that. So that's been great. And as Dr. Harrington mentioned, we'll continue to review and implement and adjust our emergency protocols as necessary over the next few years. An area that continues to be challenging nationwide and something that we're always focusing on. When it comes to technology, we mentioned previously Julie Lord went from an instructional technologist in the district to one of our directors of technology. As part of that transition, we've created a new teacher technology leader position in each of the elementary grades, and so there are 3 teacher tech leaders at Russell Street, and that's been very successful. They've been integral in offering professional development on our early release days, supporting teachers, helping write lessons for our think tank maker space so that teachers that maybe don't feel as comfortable have some things they can go in there and try. And so that's been a great model. We certainly miss Julie, but those folks have worked really hard. As has been the case since I got here, I've always been impressed with Littleton being on the cutting edge of technology. We were able to, with the help from central office, obtain a full class set of virtual reality goggles about 2 months ago at Russell Street School. And we practiced with them at staff meeting, and Heidi McGregor took us through a little tour in the VR goggles, and it was pretty amazing. And teachers have been using them a lot as well to give students experiences that they may not otherwise be able to have. And so that's a growing area. There's now opportunities where teachers can sort of create the experience for students as well as just going out and choosing one. And so I would go so far as to suggest if I called most of my friends who work in elementary at their elementary schools don't have a full class set of VR goggles. And so to have that opportunity for our children is really special. And I think it'll give them some experiences that really make school engaging for them. Excuse me. As we continue, we've talked about the think tank now for several years. We continue to want to create new lessons. Each year we think about, is there something new we can put in there to keep it engaging for students? We started with Makey-Makeys and Spheros and 3D printing and green screen videoing. We added Lego We-Dos. So we're always talking about, how can we keep that space really engaging for students, in a space that students really want to collaborate in and can be creative. And finally, we'll continue to take a look at our digital citizenship program. We have a short, I can't remember if it's 3 lessons or 5 lessons series that's been created for classrooms at Russell Street on digital citizenship. When they complete it, they get a badge for their door that we're digital citizens. And so most classrooms have finished that, and talking with Julie Lord in our tech department, we'll be continuing to enhance that program. I had a conversation with students this week about sort of online safety again, and understanding what's appropriate to do online and what's not, and what's someone else's property and those types of things. And so those are real things that students are facing much younger in life than certainly I did. And we want to be able to provide them as much information as possible so that they can be successful. So there's lots in the plan. I didn't want to go through the whole thing, but in my opinion, those are the highlights. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I do have one question in the more detailed
Mhm.
thing. One
What page, Joe?
hold on. It was like first. Under standard 3 community
Mm-hmm.
communication, page 7. Just collecting regular family feedback.
Mm-hmm.
I was just curious what that is like, or if you've developed that.
The last time we did that was a family survey.
Okay.
I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, but just the dedication that we're going to continue to
Okay.
do parent outreach. For instance, we haven't had tremendous attendance at our forums for empowering families, and we've tried them at lots of different times, and we ask the people that come, what time's best for you, and it's a little scattered, but we don't have a big audience. So, we talk about things like, let's send a survey out and find out from a broader population, would you come at all? What topics would you like to see if you were going to come, and what time's best for you? That in addition to a more global sort of full school survey. My first year here, we did one that was sort of 3 questions. Tell us 3 things that you love, 2 things that you have questions about, and 1 thing you definitely change. So, they vary from a Likert scale to sort of a narrative, but just kind of constantly seeking input from families.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep.
General comment?
Yeah, so mine kind of go to everyone, so, so you, again, with the communication, you all discussed ways to reach out to families, which are all great, and, families love getting newsletters and hearing updates and things. I think the communication piece that parents most want is what relates to their child, though, and I'm wondering how we're making sure that they're getting that piece, and if there's changes in behavior, or there's changes in grades, or there's changes in, I don't know, how they're acting in class, that we're making sure parents are getting that information.
So I can speak to Shaker Lane. So our conferences are certainly one platform for parents to have that conversation. Depending on the needs of the child, if there is a formal communication plan that needs to be developed, that is something we will determine as a team, and we often talk with parents about that. If there's, we do send positive reinforcement notes home as well. I think I look specifically to the teachers to say what kind of communication needs to happen. Our teachers have blogs. They send information home in that respect. But as far as communicating, we have a heart slip, which we follow our heart format. And if a child has broken a rule and we felt that they weren't being honest, they weren't showing effort, respect, acceptance, or taking responsibility, we process that with them. Sometimes they go home. Sometimes it's just a conversation with me or the teachers. That's a way for information to get sent home. If it rises to the level of me making a phone call home, I make that phone call to parents, and I often say to them, they're probably going to share more information with you tonight than they've shared with us, so feel free to give me a call back tomorrow, and we can process further. So it's kind of a case-by-case. I can't say it's a black and white situation, but we kind of take it as the situations are given to us.
Our general protocols would be via email or phone calls. Our teachers interact a lot with parents. In fact, last fall we had a forum with our teachers, and one of their concerns was developing some type of protocol so that people didn't expect instant communication. Our teachers are in class 6 hours a day, and sometimes they may have 30 emails. So we work through that. Generally, our expectation is if there's a challenge with a child, whether it be academically or socially or emotionally, there's an outreach to the parent, and a partnership is maintained and at times, if necessary, created, depending on the situation. As our students get older, we require a little more independence, but we also have technology with portals. So our middle school and high school parents and students have access to their marks all the time. So that's been a tremendous advantage for both students and parents to know where they stand in our courses. But even when I talk to high school staff, they have the same concerns about the number of emails that they have from parents and their outreach to them. And we need to be teaching when we're in class. We can't be looking at emails. So we've done a good job working through that. So there, in my opinion, there's a tremendous amount of communication that's going back and forth. Other auxiliary communication that connects parents to classrooms, our Twitter accounts, that has made a tremendous difference, especially in elementary schools, where parents actually feel more connected to their classrooms because they see what's happening in their classrooms every day. Blogs have been very advantageous as well. I prefer Twitter, but that's just me. Some people like blogs. I like Twitter because it's short, and you can take in a lot of information very quickly, whereas blogs take a little more time, and they're still harder to find on our websites. We still need to work on making that easier. Hope that helps.
It does. I guess I was more focused on the individual. So
I think that from our perspective at Russell Street, what we always try to say is if this was your child and this is information that you feel like you would need to know, that's when we reach out and make a communication with a parent. So sort of using the gauge of, like I've heard our school nurse recently on the phone with someone saying, if your child's going to come home with a mark on him or her, even if they're fine, I'm going to give you a call. Like as a parent, I don't want my child to get off the bus and not look like they looked when they left home without someone giving them some information. I think in the classroom, that's the same thing. If a student's acting off for some reason, we want to partner with parents to know, is there something going on? Has there been a loss in the family? Is something going on that we can support this child differently? So I would agree with Dr. Clenchey that if anything, I feel like at Russell Street, our teachers are communicating more than in many cases. We know lots about kids and partner closely with parents to try to accommodate students when there's things going on. So that's sort of just, as sort of the golden rule, that if it was your child and you would feel like, I hope someone told me this, then I think it's important that we're making a phone call and bringing a parent into the conversation.
right.
I think, just to add to the high school, and I'll speak a little bit for middle school too, in terms of just Jason, you could obviously comment too, but as we go through the ages, the level of, we expect more self-direction, more independence, we're going to be working more directly with the student. But certainly in regards to the specific concern you mentioned, students having behavioral challenges in the classroom, academic difficulty, teachers have received that message every year, and frequent reminders directly from me at faculty meetings that I don't want any parent to be blindsided by, at the end of the year, that a student suddenly failed a class and they didn't see it coming. The classic expression that we use in educational administration is the parent asking, why wasn't I notified? Why wasn't I notified that, when I could have maybe done something, I could have helped? And so our teachers hear that every year, at the beginning of the year, and then reminders throughout the year. We do have the Aspen pages. A lot of our students, a lot of our faculty have web pages. They use different platforms, but a lot of them are linked from the Aspen accounts. Grades are posted. Now at the high school, it's been a little bit different. I don't know if there's greater compliance at the younger grades in terms of frequent posting of grades. some of our teachers philosophically feel that they shouldn't post grades all the time, because it creates sometimes undue anxiety in students and in parents around a grade that really won't be of tremendous consequence when it's all finished out. But there are teachers that post every week, there are teachers that post infrequently. Or they wait till their grading is done, and so that kind of. But there's a lot of communication that way. But the expectation, professional expectation, is that if a student is experiencing difficulty, that a guidance counselor, a special education liaison, an administrator, nurse, or teacher will reach out to that parent and communicate it. And if that's not happening, we want to hear about it so we can correct the situation. But I think as you get to know the individual schools even more, you'll find that communication is something that we prize. It's a real important value to us. We have a district communication map that's on the webpage for how to resolve certain types of issues, who to call for individual concerns. And then, as the superintendent mentioned, we have a wide variety of platforms out there for where teachers are constantly disseminating information for parents' review and keeping up to date on what's going on in the classroom.
Great, thank you. And then my second question had to do with safety. So each of you in your plans had that developmentally appropriate Alice training. And so I'm just kind of wondering what developmentally appropriate you see it as in each of the buildings. How is it being implemented differently?
I can start with the high school, maybe we can work our way down, but I'd say that in terms of the grades, but at the high school and probably, Jason, at the middle school, there's a more candid, real-life discussion with kids who are anywhere between 14 and 19, years of age. And we talk openly about real-life scenarios, active shooter situations. And that's not to be alarmist, but we talk about two specific scenarios. One is a shelter-in-place protocol in students. I've heard of this from me twice at least this year. We had a review, and we had no review at the beginning of the year, and then we did drills this year. And so they're familiar with. We did a drill just recently, in which we talked about barricading a room, and they practiced that. We talked about a situation where they would talk about a scenario where they might counter if the barricade had been breached. We talked about a scenario where there'd be an evacuation, and so that's real. I mean, we're talking about. It's kind of scary. It is scary. It's scary for the staff to even go over it. The place was covered with neighboring school resource officers and police when we went over this to offer reassurance and offer direct instruction on inspection of a barricade. That was recent at the high school. We went into it in depth. Whereas at the other levels, we would tone it down. We feel our kids were, although it was scary, they were able to handle it and they responded really well. And in fact, they wanted this experience. They wanted to have a real candid discussion with staff and with police about what would they do in a situation where they felt threatened. There was an active threat in a building. And we talked about it not just happening in a school. We talked about it happening in a public place of any type, airport, movie theater, a mall, any number of places. And then we talked to them about the distinction between a shelter-in-place protocol where there's a medical emergency or some type of environmental situation, a facilities issue where we would just shelter in place and they're not in danger. I wanted them to know the clear distinction of that. And we reviewed that, and they've probably heard it ad nauseum. But we have real discussions, and there's back and forth. There's an opportunity for them to ask questions. Then we, in an auditorium setting with class meetings, and then they had an opportunity to discuss it with their advisory teachers in a small group setting. That level of depth, intense discussion, and to express feelings and worries about the whole, everything that's happened in particular, it's been on our increasingly on our radar now. It might not happen as much at the other levels, but I'll leave it to Scott maybe to pick up where I just left off, or Jason.
Yeah, sure. We in the elementary level, there was probably 5 years ago when we implemented the ALICE program. For the last 5 years, the way it's looked at the elementary levels is our SRO has come in the first 2 months of school and visited either every class or every couple classes, most often with me, and done a 15-minute or so presentation more about, he leads out with sort of stranger danger, and what if your parents taught you about stranger danger, and what if there was, a dangerous situation at school or a dangerous person, and how could we help ourselves be safe in those situations. And so, John talked about the high school students barricading. The SRO at the elementary level has talked about building a fort in the classroom, and how could we make it so no one could get into our fort. And so we've done that all 6 years. Our SRO comes and talks to, does a refresher training with our teaching staff at a faculty meeting in the fall, and we're always evaluating how we're handling that. So we're looking, moving forward, to start to do, likely to start to do a couple announced drills a year at the elementary level, in a really low-key kind of way, where students can practice some of the scenarios that John talked about, again, without some of the specifics about the types of things that may be dangerous at school.
And using different language.
Yeah, and so we're always in flux, but that's sort of how it's looked recently, and that's one of the areas that moving forward, I would expect to see a slight change in the K-5 protocols moving forward next year. We'll be communicating that with parents in the fall.
Shaker Lane is pretty parallel to that. Our preschool kids get a much watered-down version. Our kindergarten, transitional first and second grade students do have the school resource officer come in about 15, 20 minutes, and same thing as Principal Bazidlo at Russell Street, just talks about building a fort, how to be safe, what if something doesn't look right to you. But we don't use any of those terminology that would not be appropriate for our kids. And then, again, just moving towards some type of enhanced training in the fall.
Thank you.
Good, anything else?
Nope.
All right, so as Superintendent Clunchy did talk about, we've had our presentations on all 4 of the school improvement plans, so I would entertain a motion that we approve the school improvement plans as presented.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve the school improvement plans as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you. Appreciate the updates and the work that goes into it. And just want to reiterate, the school improvement plans are, they're led, the effort's led by our administrative staff, but there is parental participation at all the schools, and at the middle school and high school, there is also student participation. So it's a community-based type of exercise, and we appreciate everybody that was involved at all the different schools and participating in that exercise, so thank you. All right, we have some proposed handbook changes we want to review.
We just have one this evening from the middle school, so we'll turn it over to Jason.
Sure. One specifically around how we classify absences at the middle school level, the difference between the excused and unexcused absence. It presents certain challenges when we look at it from a clerical perspective of what is excused, what is unexcused, what do those terms even mean anymore. We're looking to move more towards a blanket absent and present marking for students. There was a time in schools where if an absence was unexcused, the work wasn't allowed to be made up, but if it was excused, you had that extension. We've moved beyond that today, so no student is going to be told, no, you can't take this test, or no, you can't complete this project because a phone call wasn't made. And so if the schools operate in a way that says, listen, we're going to be inclusive of this concept, then it makes it easier for us to streamline the work that we do in our data programs to be able to categorize both as just absent, because at the end of the day, the student was not present. Less as a punitive measure and more as just a record of attendance. And so for us, it'll help demystify and keep us from having to sort of try to figure out and hazard guesses as to why students are gone, or as to the frequency of it, and look more at the totality of the absences. So it's a streamlining effort clerically for us, and to remove the stigma of the unexcused versus the excused.
And as I read this, I mean, we still want to have some idea of excused versus unexcused, but mostly to be able to address evolving behavior relative to attendance, not as a punitive thing in grades, but we just want to make sure that the family understands, like, the student's going to do his or her best work by being here.
Right.
And if we see, if you guys see an emerging trend, like a student who had been attending all of a sudden is missing. You
Right.
just want to be able to identify what the issue is and address it.
And those
get
red
'em-
flags, we would address whether they were, let's say, for example, a student was missing 15 days a month when they weren't before, but the parent was calling them infrequently.
Right.
That's still an alarm to us because the
Right.
student's not in building, whether or not
Right.
that phone call was
Right,
made.
right.
And so I agree with you. And this in no way is it to say that parents no longer have to call their students in. It's helpful for us to know who is being held out, and that the parents are aware, so that we're aware of truancy issues or anything of the like. But it just is a way for us to sort of take out the uncertainty of, was this excused, was it not, what's valid? Who am I to say what's a valid excuse, when it comes to family issues and things that we don't know about? And so sort of to level that out and create something consistent across the board. It doesn't change the amount of work and the expectation of student work. It just changes the way we approach how we view absences.
There are also statutory requirements that schools have to follow, so none of this would supersede statutory requirements. So, one thing when it was discussed with me, the unexcused, or whatever suffix or prefix more correctly you want to use, at times carries with it negative connotations and the zero era. We've really adopted a growth mindset strategy in this district where we expect our students to make up work, and zeros aren't an option. And we'll do everything we can to help them out and partner with the parents to make that happen. But 30 years ago, it was more of, you have an unexcused absence, you miss a test, you get a zero, and there was no conscious effort on the part of professional staff to help students through those scenarios. Well, I think this is just part of an evolution of cleaning up some of our language as well, so that we're completely aligned.
Any questions or comments on this particular suggested change?
I'm just curious if that's the goal, why we're continuing to use those terms at all, excused and unexcused.
Well, by law, we have to call them excused at least.
Okay, all right.
Right. We don't have to use unexcused or inexcused. We have to have an excused category and report by law.
Okay.
Jason, just to clarify, is the highlighted yellow changes or deletions?
These would be deletions.
Right, so I don't think
Okay,
people are
thank
clear
you.
that those
Sorry,
highlights
yes,
are,
yes,
those
yes.
highlights
I know
are
why you asked
deletions,
that.
and bold or bold is an addition.
Right.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
the confusion. Yeah.
There we
So
go.
So basically, boiling it all down to all absences are counted toward the final record.
Great.
Right, yeah, eliminating the highlighted parts in
I
yellow
understand.
from the handbook, I think will make it a little easier. for
Okay.
That
parents
makes
to
much
see.
more sense. Thank you.
Sorry.
There we go.
All right. All right. Staying with that trend, we'll move on to the dress code language.
Sure. Similarly, you can see the highlighted areas. As we move forward into the 21st century, the issue of the dress code becomes more and more, it gets harder and harder for us to deal with at the middle school level regarding specific areas of dress. And so we've discussed at the administrative level about the dress code and how we go about that. And so what Cheryl and I had talked about was getting rid of some of the language that specifically identifies certain types of clothing, and rather go with something a little bit more blanket, because to be honest, some of the language, not just in our handbook, but in handbooks all over the country, they don't really tell the full story. So for example, let's say there will be language that says, well, the shoulders have to be covered. But sometimes the student has something far more appropriate than not with the shoulders still showing, but by definition, that would go against the dress code. And so it sort of gets rid of that gray area where you say, okay, it's technically in violation of the code, but at the same time, it's not inappropriate. And it allows, I think, us to be able to work with families, with students, to be able to talk more about appropriate and inappropriate, as opposed to going down a list of specific items. Fashions change, trends change, and if the handbooks don't change with it, then it leaves us in a bit of a lurch. And so this would allow that to be more of a flexible document, so that the school can work with families as those things happen. So you can see getting rid of the idea of a series of offenses. To be honest, it's difficult to track, which administrator talked to which student about this code. finding an administrator or finding a teacher that's willing to have that conversation as we move forward is also, difficult because these are touchy subjects. And so being able to say, listen, we're not going to look at this as a series of offenses, first, second, third, but rather dealing with the whole child and the dress that comes with that. And it gives also us more flexibility, again, to work with families when it comes to what is the appropriate response if students were to show up in clothing that's considered inappropriate, distracting, or otherwise.
This is specific to the middle school. Right?
Yes, it is
So
specific
we
to
know
the middle
that
school.
high school has maintained its rules.
Sure. So a lot of this is, I think it was said before, is a lot of it's just cleaning up some of the language of the handbook that may be a little bit outdated, and just giving us a little bit more freedom to be able to do what's right by students and families and the school community.
Well, John, I'd ask you to look at that, your section as well, because as clothing changes, I need to make sure that we have similar expectations and common sense statements.
Sure. Our school council looked at this a year ago and wanted to make sure that we wanted to make sure that everything was, we're following the statute around dress and free expression. And so I think we reached a real consensus on that when we last presented it to school, not only as a school community, then also the school committee when we presented this. It's very generic language at the high school.
Questions or comments?
Go ahead, sorry. In general, I applaud the change. I think that's the right move. I'm just curious why we're saying no hoods, but hats are okay.
The hat hood policy was adopted before me, so I don't know if I can speak to
I can
its
comment on
origination.
that.
All right.
It's very identific. Hats are something that students just love to wear. A lot of our staff like to wear it. They're often representing a favorite sports team, or a lot of times it's the Littleton. The baseball players walk around the building with their hat. The hoods can be an issue for us when it becomes a question of identification, trying to decipher, if someone's hiding something or hiding what they look like. We need to be able to tell who's coming down the hall when they're covered up. So it's really for safety reasons.
And there are some academic reasons too. Students will often pull the hood up but leave the earbuds in, so it's difficult for the teachers to tell. I'm seeing some nods over there on the other side of the room. Of course, you've never done that, but it makes it difficult for us to know what's happening. Some students will pull the hood, and they like to pull the drawstring, so you only see this much of their face.
Very common.
You see their eyes?
Yeah. And so beyond safety, there's that academic perspective, which can also become a distraction for students, and we like to just make sure that that's not part of what we're doing.
Great.
Ben?
No, I was just gonna joke about the sweatbands maybe worn being deleted. I think, that's not an issue. You're trying to.
In the 70s, that was
You'd
a big deal.
be surprised. The current NBA climate, the sweatbands are back a little bit. And
They
Well, I'll tell
can
you,
be worn.
one of the
Even though you're
things-
deleting it, it's fine.
Right. I think it's just understood that they
Making sure we
Yes, yeah,
know.
that sweatbands are okay.
One of the issues, though, is when we talk about gender roles when it comes to dress codes, and the idea of, let's say, a female student wants to wear something that holds the hair back, right? It's not a bandana, it's not a sweatband, and so the male student might say, well, why can't I? And so the idea is we just want to level it and make it consistent gender to gender, student to student, so that if the hair needs to be held back, the hair needs to be held back, as long as we all understand that that's what the purpose of it is, and it's not for anything else. And so, again, just to sort of level that out.
The comment I would have is, we did go through a revamping of the dress code policy a couple of years ago, both at the middle school and the high school. And I think it's important we talked about it then, and just to remind people that when that happened, there was parental and student contributions to the dress code policy. And it emerged that there was a strong community support for the idea of a dress code. The idea of not having a dress code was not supported. The question was on the margins and how we're going to execute on it.
Sure.
So I think we need to keep that in mind. And the second thing is, Dr. Clancy, I appreciate the point you made. I think it's very important that regardless of what we decide, because we can as a community we might have different determinations in other communities, but the consistency between buildings is vitally important. If the students feel like that's unfair, well, Yes, it might be, but so's work and church and every place else. You're just going to kind of have to get used to it to a degree. But it's really difficult if we tell them one thing at the middle school, and then the next year they're dealing with a whole nother set, or not a whole nother set, because that would never be the case, but a significant variation that can be confusing and
I'll tell you,
definitely arbitrary.
That's actually dead on, because a district that I worked in previously, the middle schools had no hats, no hoods policy, but the high school allowed them.
Yep.
So you take kids up for a step-up day, and they see kids walking around, here they're 8th graders, and all of a sudden they're saying, well, why don't they get to, why don't we?
Right.
And it really it creates a lot of problems at the middle school level, because that disparity between the rules, you know, older siblings get to wear hats, but we don't, and then there's that constant fight that we deal with. And so I think the idea of the two schools.
So I just want to make sure that as an administration that we're moving
Consistent.
together, you know.
Yeah.
And when you really think about it, we're encouraging our students to make good decisions and good choices, and if you keep giving them rules to follow, we're not helping them grow. And so again, this is just
Right.
aligning more aligned with our philosophy.
Right, there's two reasons of the dress code. The one is, and we talk about it, is to make sure that, we're not having disruptions during the school day, because we're all there for a particular reason that we don't want to lose sight of. But the second one is to foster responsibility and accountability. And, every opportunity that we get to do that, especially in those older ages where they're getting ready to go to school, where they're going to be college, or going to be truly independent, or into the workforce, where they're going to get dictated to at a much more significant degree than maybe they're thinking about or being able to understand. So I think that's important. And again, the community supports that. There was no question about that when we went through the effort. The idea of having a dress code policy was supported. It was just a question of what's the best way to execute on it. So, all right, great, thank you. Do we need a motion on this one, or is it just more for?
Handbook changes do have to be approved by the school committee.
I make a motion to accept the middle school handbook changes as noted in the agenda.
Second. Motion made and seconded. Any further conversation? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right, thank you. All right. Move on to new business, signature authorizations. So this is kind of a housekeeping thing. We need to annually vote to approve a single signature by a representative of the school committee for the accounts payable and payroll, so that we don't all have to do it at the meetings.
Thank you.
Am I missing anything else on that, Kelly?
No, we've been, again, there's another statute, but we've been doing this for years, and we typically have one person sign, and it's usually the chair, so.
All right, so I need a motion to authorize a single signature to authorize accounts payable and payroll.
Okay. I make a motion to authorize a single signature for accounts
Payable and
and payroll. Second.
Motion made and
Do
seconded.
we have,
Any further discussion?
do we have to say who it's going to be?
I don't think we do. I don't think does it have to be the same person?
I have never put that in
No.
the minutes.
Okay.
I've
No.
always just in school committee
Yeah.
members.
In practice,
Just
I've been
announce
doing
one,
it just
right.
because I'm around, so I go in and do it. But I think if I wasn't around and it needed to be done, I think it's perfectly appropriate for somebody else to do it. So thank you for that clarification.
It's actually a great question, because if for some reason the person that was designated was over in another country and couldn't make it back, you couldn't release payroll or
Right.
pay any
Yeah.
bills, so.
Right.
Would
that's
that be a
why we
problem?
Just a bit.
I'll just give them the person's cell number.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right, the MASC Mass Joint Conference for November 2018, Kelly?
Yeah, just a preliminary reminder that, I mean, it seems like a long way away, but it isn't. It's the second week in November, I guess. And I would encourage you, if you can make it work, to come down for a day or a couple of days. Great opportunity to have some professional development of a variety of topics, and also for you to network with other school committee members, which I think is really valuable. There are hundreds of people down there every year, and it's very well done.
Yeah, we've had representation before. I know that, I think Daryl's gone in the past. I know Alex went, Pratt. It's November 7th to the 10th. Is it down at the Cape?
Yes, it is.
Down at the Cape. and early bird registration begins in mid-June. So none of us has to make up our mind to go, but if you think you are going to go, or if you decide you do want to go, and you know you want to register, then if you can take advantage of the early bird registration, I think it's a little less expensive. But it will be paid for by the district. You're not out of pocket, correct?
You bet. And the only other thing is, if somebody does go down, they have a voting delegate assignment. Every year they run by new resolutions, and you have to be registered in order to go in and contribute and vote. So.
And typically when that's happened, if we've known someone's going, and there are resolutions, as a committee, we will discuss them and give direction to our designee who's going down. So we can just kind of wait and see that agenda will come out, the items on that, at the meeting will come out, and we can talk about those. All right.
Should we just tell you, or should we register?
Well, what you can do, if you're interested, phone Dorothy,
Okay.
and she will magically take care of it for you.
Wow.
So you'll need to know the number of days that you're going down, et cetera, because there'll be meal packages, hotel room.
Right. That's the other thing. You don't need to commit to the whole thing if
Right.
you wanted to go down. And that's the other thing. If you think you're interested, that's fine. If you want to wait to see what the agenda is, that can sometimes, make you decide. Although it's usually pretty broad.
It really is.
A lot of stuff. So
You do a great job.
Yeah. If you're inclined to go, I'm pretty sure you can find something of interest to attend. All right. We good on that? All right. Any other new business? Good, okay. Second point in the meeting for input from interested citizens. Anyone? Seeing none. Subcommittee reports. Daryl was out sick for PMBC. Budget subcommittee, we're kind of in hiatus till we get going in the fall. In the policy subcommittee, we are going to postpone this, given that we only have 3 out of 5. I think this is anytime we do a policy, we want to make
Seems
sure.
to be cursed.
Exactly. Yeah, a tough time. But we will get to it. It will be a while, because this is our last meeting before we go on summer hiatus. So I don't expect that we'll get to it before September, but that's fine. You guys are good with that? Any other business? No? Given that this is our last meeting, the school committee would like to wish everyone a fun and safe summer, our students, staff, and families. And then we'll be ready to, we've got a couple more weeks, nobody's done yet, so finish strong.
Yes.
Exactly.
Good line, finish
And
strong.
Finish strong, and we'll be back in September with our regular meetings. All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to, sorry, I don't know
Adjourn.
this wording. To adjourn. I didn't know if
I
there's.
second that.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.